He had always been drawn to music in a way that seemed natural, almost like it was part of him. Even as a small child, he would sit quietly in the corner of the room whenever someone played an instrument, his eyes wide and his fingers twitching as if they wanted to join in. The soft hum of a melody, the rise and fall of a tune, it all felt like a language he understood before he could even speak fully. It was not just interest or curiosity. It was as if he could feel the notes running through him, waiting for his own hands to give them life. One day, his attention was caught by a piano in a public place. It was old, slightly worn at the edges, but to him it was perfect. The black and white keys seemed to shine under the soft light, each one holding a secret melody waiting to be discovered. He walked closer, hesitant at first, his small fingers reaching toward the keys without touching them, almost as if he was afraid that the magic would vanish if he did. He lingered there for hours, watching people come and go, listening to the notes they played. Some were skilled, and the music flowed effortlessly from their fingers, while others were clumsy, producing only noise. Still, he watched with rapt attention, learning without anyone knowing. Every movement, every press of a key, every shift in rhythm was stored in his mind. He was building a map of sound, a secret world where he could one day belong. He wanted more than anything to touch the piano himself. He wanted to see if the music he felt inside could come alive in the same way he had seen others do. Gathering courage, he approached an adult nearby, someone who seemed responsible for the piano. "Can I play?" he asked quietly, his voice carrying a mix of hope and fear. The adult looked down at him, hesitated for a moment, then shook their head. "Not today," was all they said. There was no explanation, no encouragement, just refusal. He felt a small pinch in his chest but nodded silently, stepping back. Days passed, and he returned whenever he could. Sometimes it was early in the morning when the place was quiet, other times it was late in the afternoon when the sun cast long shadows across the keys. Each time he asked, he received the same answer. Sometimes the refusal was gentle, sometimes it was firm, but it was always the same. The piano remained out of reach, a tantalizing promise just beyond his fingertips. Despite the refusals, he did not give up. He had a way of learning from what he could see and hear. At home, he would hum the tunes he had imagined, tapping on tables and books, pretending the surfaces were keys. His parents noticed the determination in his eyes, the way his fingers moved in the air as if tracing invisible notes. They encouraged him in small ways, clapping when he created a rhythm or singing along when he hummed a melody. Yet, the piano remained the ultimate dream, the source of a music that he could feel but not yet play. His fascination grew into something more profound. He began to notice details that others overlooked. The way a finger lingered on a key just a moment too long, the subtle shift in posture that made a melody flow smoothly, the pause before a chord that created tension and release. He studied these movements carefully, committing them to memory. He drew imaginary keyboards in notebooks and practiced the movements of his fingers, imagining the sound even when there was none. In these quiet, secret practices, he felt closer to the piano than ever before. At times, he felt frustrated. The refusal to let him play felt like a wall he could not climb. He watched others come and go, playing effortlessly, while he was left outside the circle, yearning for just a touch, just a chance. But these moments of frustration were fleeting. They were replaced by determination, by a quiet promise to himself that he would find a way, that he would make the music come alive, no matter how long it took. He started noticing patterns in the music he heard. He could predict the next note in a melody, feel the rhythm in his chest, almost as if his body had memorized the music even when his hands had not. This made him more confident, more sure that he was capable. Each refusal became less of a setback and more of a challenge. He learned patience, the kind that comes from waiting, watching, and preparing for the right moment. One afternoon, he tried a new approach. Instead of asking outright if he could play, he asked if he could just stand nearby and watch. The adult hesitated but allowed it. He stood quietly beside the piano, studying every movement, every subtle pressure of the fingers on the keys. He memorized the angles of the hands, the speed of the movements, the way the music seemed to flow from the heart through the fingers. He absorbed everything, determined that when the moment came, he would be ready. Evenings at home became times of private practice, not on a piano, but on imaginary keys in the air. His fingers moved as if the instrument were there, creating melodies only he could hear. He would close his eyes and feel the music, letting it flow through him in waves of emotion. He began to dream of the day he could finally touch the piano, imagining the look on the faces of those who had refused him when they heard the music he could create. Friends and family started noticing something remarkable. He could remember entire melodies after hearing them only once. He could replicate rhythms perfectly, tap out complex sequences on tables or the floor, and even improvise small tunes that sounded beautiful and complete. People began to whisper that he had a gift, though they could not explain exactly what it was. He just knew that his connection to music was unlike anything he had experienced before. The boy was still small, still uncertain of the world, but his passion for music had grown into a quiet fire that would not be extinguished. Every refusal, every moment of being kept away from the piano, only strengthened his resolve. He learned that talent alone was not enough. Patience, observation, and perseverance were just as important. And so, he waited, practiced, and dreamed, holding on to the hope that one day, he would be allowed to touch the keys and let the music he felt inside finally be heard. As the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, he became more determined than ever. He started imagining entire compositions in his mind, layering melodies, harmonies, and rhythms that he had observed and memorized. Each tune became a small triumph, proof that he was ready for the piano even if no one else knew it yet. The refusal he faced every time he asked was no longer discouraging. It was a challenge, a barrier that he would one day overcome with the gift he carried in his hands and heart. He began to talk less and listen more. He noticed the smallest details, the way a hand shifted slightly for a difficult chord, the breath before a long note, the subtle movements of the feet keeping rhythm. Every detail was a clue, a piece of the puzzle that he was determined to solve. He became patient, learning to wait for the right moment, understanding that the magic he sought could not be rushed. By now, he was no longer just a boy fascinated by the piano. He had become a student of music in the purest sense. His eyes would light up at a familiar melody, and his fingers would twitch involuntarily, longing to translate what he heard into action. He dreamed not of fame or recognition, but of the simple joy of producing music, of creating something beautiful with his own hands. He knew, deep down, that when the time came, he would not just play the piano, he would make it sing. He had spent months learning by watching and imagining, and slowly he began to notice his own progress. Even without touching the piano, he could feel the music in a new way. His mind could trace melodies he had heard and even pieces he had never heard before, arranging notes in patterns that sounded beautiful inside his imagination. He started humming softly to himself, tapping rhythms on any surface he could find, from tables to window sills. His fingers moved as if the piano were right in front of him, hitting keys that existed only in his mind. The more he practiced this way, the more certain he felt that when he finally touched the real piano, he would be ready. One day, he spotted a small music class being held nearby. He didn't belong to the class, but he quietly moved closer, careful not to be noticed so he could watch. There was a piano at the front, and a teacher demonstrating different notes and scales to the children. He studied the teacher's hands closely, noticing the way the fingers curved over the keys, the speed of motion, the weight of each press. Even the way the teacher's wrist moved slightly with each chord caught his attention. He committed it all to memory, storing every detail as though preparing for an important journey. The children in the class were allowed to play small pieces, but he was not. He watched them with keen eyes, not out of envy, but out of a desire to understand. Each mistake the children made taught him something. He noticed how a finger slipping slightly could ruin a melody and how proper posture made the music flow more easily. Every small success of the children was also a lesson, showing him how determination and focus could produce beautiful sounds. Even from a distance, He could feel the rhythm and imagine playing the same notes himself. He could almost hear the piano singing under his fingers. At home, he began to use these lessons in new ways. He would lay out books to create a pretend keyboard, pressing imaginary keys and repeating the movements he had observed. He started creating small melodies, sometimes just 2 or 3 notes in a sequence, and then gradually increasing their complexity. Sometimes his creations sounded wonderful, sometimes they were awkward and uneven, but he did not mind. Each attempt was progress, a step closer to touching the piano he dreamed of. He felt music as a physical force, a pulse in his chest that demanded to be released. He also became more aware of the emotions behind the music he heard. He noticed that some notes made him feel happy, others sad, and some gave him a strange sense of longing. This understanding made him more sensitive, more patient, and more creative. He would close his eyes and imagine entire pieces, letting his hands move freely in the air as he played a song that existed only in his mind. It was a private world, one where he could explore the limits of his imagination without judgment or refusal. Finally, the day came when he was allowed to touch the piano. He remembered every moment leading to this, every imagined key press, every silent melody he had rehearsed in his mind. As he approached the instrument, his heart raced and his palms felt warm and slightly clammy. He had imagined this moment countless times, yet the reality of it made him nervous. The piano sat before him, majestic and inviting, and he could feel its energy as if it were alive, waiting for his fingers to awaken it. He sat down on the bench, feeling the wood beneath him and the smooth surface of the keys in front of him. He took a deep breath, recalling all the lessons he had learned through observation, imagination, and practice. He reminded himself that every note, every chord, was already inside him. His hands just had to bring them to life. The room was quiet, with a few adults watching silently. Their faces reflected curiosity, skepticism, and a hint of doubt, but he did not notice them. He was focused entirely on the piano, on the connection he had been dreaming of for so long. He placed his fingers gently on the keys, testing their weight and response. The sound that emerged was soft, almost hesitant, but it was real. The notes resonated in the room, and he felt a thrill of excitement. He closed his eyes and let the melodies he had imagined flow through him, letting his fingers move naturally. At first, it was simple, small sequences, basic harmonies, but it felt magical. The music seemed to emerge effortlessly, as if it had been waiting for this moment to escape from within him. The adults watching began to lean forward, their skepticism fading into surprise. The boy's fingers moved with a confidence that belied his age. Each note, each chord, was deliberate and expressive. The music carried emotion, telling a story without words. Even without understanding the technical skill behind it, the listeners could feel the beauty and passion in every sound. It was not just music. It was an expression of the boy's heart, a language that connected him to the world in a way nothing else had. As he continued, his confidence grew. He remembered the small lessons from the children he had observed, the teacher's subtle hand movements, and the rhythms he had practiced in secret. His fingers responded instinctively, flowing over the keys, creating harmonies and patterns that sounded both natural and complex. He lost track of time, entirely absorbed in the music. Each note felt like a conversation, each chord a declaration of emotion. The piano was no longer an object. It had become a partner, a living extension of his creativity. The music began to change as he experimented. He tried faster sequences, delicate trills, and bold chords. He combined rhythms he had imagined with new improvisations, testing the boundaries of what he could do. The room was silent except for the sound of the piano, yet it felt as though everyone present could hear the music in their hearts. Even the most skeptical adult could not deny the wonder unfolding before them. His fingers danced across the keys with a freedom that came from both talent and years of patient preparation. At one point, he played a melody that he had invented entirely in his mind. It was a soft, flowing tune, delicate and emotional, carrying a sense of longing and hope. The notes filled the room and seemed to linger in the air, making everyone pause and listen closely. he did not notice their reactions. He was lost in the music, experiencing it as fully as he could imagine. When he finished, there was a brief silence, as if the world itself held its breath. Then, slowly, applause began, soft at first, then growing louder. The adults watching were visibly moved, their faces reflecting awe and admiration. He felt a warmth in his chest, a mixture of relief, joy, and accomplishment. For so long, he had been denied the chance to play, forced to wait, observe, and imagine. Now, he had finally brought the music within him to life. It was everything he had hoped for and more. He realized that the refusals and waiting had prepared him in ways he could never have imagined. They had strengthened his focus, patience, and understanding, allowing him to create music that moved others deeply. The boy continued to explore the piano, trying new sequences and experimenting with different harmonies. He discovered that certain notes could evoke specific emotions, and he began to play intentionally, crafting small stories through his music. Each piece he created had a beginning, a middle, and an end, a journey that he shared with anyone who would listen. His imagination, once confined to silent practice, now found full expression on the keys. He felt a deep connection to the instrument, as if it were responding to his thoughts and feelings. As he played, he also noticed the reactions of the adults around him. Some had tears in their eyes, others smiled widely, and a few could hardly believe what they were witnessing. The skepticism and doubt that had surrounded him for so long melted away, replaced by admiration and wonder. They could see not just his skill, but his passion, his dedication, and the years of preparation that had led to this moment. It was a powerful reminder that talent alone was not enough. Patience, perseverance, and love for one's craft were equally important. He experimented further, combining melodies he had observed with his own creations. He played softly, loudly, quickly, and slowly, exploring the full range of the piano. The music was alive, dynamic, and expressive, reflecting the depth of his understanding and his ability to translate emotion into sound. He felt a sense of liberation, a release of the energy that had built up over years of silent practice and observation. Every note, every chord, was a triumph, a declaration of his readiness to finally share his gift with the world. As the session continued, he began to notice subtle changes in the sound of the piano itself. The instrument responded differently to each touch, each pressure, and each movement. He adjusted his fingers instinctively, learning to coax the desired tone from each key. The connection between him and the piano deepened, evolving from a simple interaction into a partnership. The music became a dialogue, a conversation between his heart and the instrument, each influencing the other. Eventually, he paused and looked up, noticing the expressions on the faces around him. There was amazement, admiration, and even a hint of disbelief. He realized that what he had imagined and practiced in secret had now become tangible, something others could experience and feel. The music had bridged the gap between his inner world and the outside world, transforming quiet dreams into audible reality. He felt a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing that the patience and determination he had cultivated were finally paying off. In the days that followed, he returned to the piano whenever he could. Each session brought new discoveries and new challenges. He experimented with compositions he had imagined, combined techniques he had observed, and continued to develop his unique style. The more he played, the more confident he became, and the more he realized that his journey with the piano had only just begun. Each note was a step forward, each melody a reflection of his growth and his unwavering love for music. He also began to notice how the piano affected those who listened. People were moved in ways he had not anticipated. Some felt joy, others felt sadness, and many were inspired by the passion and emotion conveyed through his playing. The boy understood that music had the power to touch hearts and communicate in a way that words could not. This realization deepened his commitment, motivating him to continue learning, exploring, and expressing himself through the piano. Over time, his reputation grew quietly. Friends, family, and even strangers began to recognize the depth of his talent. People would pause to listen, offering smiles, praise, or words of encouragement. The boy, however, remained humble. For him, the true reward was the music itself, the connection he felt to the piano, and the joy of expressing emotions through sound. Every session reinforced his belief that music was a language, a gift, and a responsibility. Through this experience, he learned that dreams, patience, and perseverance were inseparable. The months of waiting, observing, imagining, and practicing had prepared him for this breakthrough. The refusals he had faced were not obstacles, but lessons that shaped his approach, honed his skills, and deepened his understanding of music. Now, with his fingers dancing across the keys, he knew that he had finally arrived at a point where preparation met opportunity, and the result was pure wonder. After his first breakthrough at the piano, the boy's confidence grew steadily. He began visiting the piano regularly, each time learning something new, experimenting with melodies, and discovering the full range of his talent. Every key, every chord, and every rhythm became a part of him. He felt the music not only through his fingers but through his entire body, as if the notes were a language that spoke directly to his heart. The adults and other listeners around him could feel the depth of his music, and word began to spread quietly about the extraordinary talent of this young boy. One day, a music teacher visiting the community center noticed him. The teacher had a keen eye for talent, and even before the boy played, the teacher sensed something remarkable. He watched the boy move his fingers across the keys with precision and expression, noticing the depth of understanding behind each note. The teacher's eyes widened in admiration when the boy played a melody entirely from memory, capturing the emotions of the piece flawlessly. It was clear that the boy had a rare gift, a combination of natural talent, dedication, and an intuitive connection with the piano. The teacher approached him gently, asking if he had received any formal lessons. The boy shook his head, explaining how he had learned by observing, imagining, and practicing in secret. The teacher was amazed and encouraged him to take lessons, offering to guide him and help him refine his skills. For the first time, someone recognized his talent and offered structured support. The boy accepted eagerly, feeling a mixture of excitement and gratitude. It was an opportunity he had long dreamed of, a chance to grow even further under the guidance of someone who understood music deeply. As the lessons progressed, the boy's skill developed rapidly. He learned new techniques, studied musical theory, and explored more complex compositions. Yet, he never lost the instinctive connection to music that had defined him from the beginning. Every new piece he learned was infused with emotion, reflecting the stories, feelings, and experiences he had carried with him all along. The teacher was continually impressed by his ability to express depth and nuance in every performance. The boy's talent seemed limitless, and his dedication was unwavering. People began to take notice beyond the community center. Small gatherings would form when he played, as neighbors, friends, and even strangers came to hear the music that seemed to flow effortlessly from his fingers. The boy's performances were not just displays of technical skill. They were experiences that moved listeners profoundly. Some were brought to tears, others smiled with joy, and many were inspired by the emotion and expression in each note. The piano had become a bridge between the boy and the world, a way for him to communicate in a language that transcended words. His parents were filled with pride and amazement. They had witnessed their child's quiet determination, his patience, and his unwavering love for music. They saw how the community responded to his talent and how the boy himself had grown not only as a musician but as a person. He had learned discipline, resilience, and the power of focus. The piano had not only revealed his gift but had shaped his character, teaching him lessons that would last a lifetime. The boy also began to inspire others, especially children who were curious about music. He would demonstrate simple techniques, share the joy of creating melodies, and encourage others to explore their own musical interests. His story became a symbol of perseverance, showing that talent alone was not enough. Dedication, patience, and the courage to pursue a dream were equally important. People began to understand that his music was not just entertainment. It was an expression of a journey, a reflection of years of preparation, waiting, and belief in oneself. Occasionally, he was invited to perform in small events, local gatherings, and community functions. Each performance brought new experiences, helping him to grow more confident in front of an audience. He learned to connect with listeners, to read their reactions, and to adapt his playing to create a shared emotional experience. The thrill of performing and the joy of moving others through music became an essential part of his life. It reinforced his desire to continue learning, to explore new compositions, and to develop a unique style that was entirely his own. One day, while practicing a challenging piece, he noticed how much he had improved since that first tentative touch of the piano. He remembered the months of observation, the secret rehearsals on imaginary keyboards, and the countless hours of patience. Each memory was a reminder of how far he had come and how determination could overcome obstacles. The realization gave him a sense of humility and gratitude, understanding that every step, every refusal, and every moment of waiting had contributed to the music he now created. The recognition he received from others encouraged him to continue exploring his potential. Teachers, mentors, and listeners all provided support and guidance, but they also left him space to develop his personal style. He experimented with different genres, combined traditional techniques with his own improvisations, and explored ways to express emotion more vividly through sound. His creativity flourished, and the piano became a companion that responded to his imagination, helping him to bring his inner world to life. Despite the growing attention, he remained grounded. He understood that talent was a gift, but it was also a responsibility. He practiced diligently, refined his technique, and maintained the curiosity and passion that had driven him from the very beginning. The music he created was not just for recognition. It was a reflection of his journey, his emotions, and the lessons he had learned through perseverance and patience. He also learned the importance of connecting with others through music. Each time he played for someone new, he observed their reactions, noticing how certain melodies could evoke joy, sadness, or inspiration. This understanding deepened his empathy and awareness, helping him to create music that resonated with people on a personal level. The piano had become a tool not only for self-expression but also for touching the hearts of others, creating shared experiences and emotional connections. As his reputation grew, he encountered new challenges and opportunities. More advanced pieces demanded technical skill, endurance, and creativity. He embraced these challenges eagerly, seeing them as chances to grow and explore. Each new achievement reinforced his confidence, yet he never lost sight of the journey that had brought him to this point. The boy who had once been refused the chance to touch the piano had become a musician whose talent and dedication inspired everyone around him. Through all of this, he maintained a sense of humility. He remembered the refusals, the moments of waiting, and the quiet practice that had prepared him for this moment. He knew that true mastery required constant learning, reflection, and openness to growth. He continued to practice, to experiment, and to share his music, always striving to improve and to communicate more deeply through sound. The boy's journey was a testament to the power of perseverance and the importance of opportunity. Those who had initially refused him had inadvertently shaped his character, teaching him patience and resilience. When the chance finally came, he was ready not just because of talent, but because of the years of preparation, observation, and dedication. His music was a reflection of his journey, a celebration of his growth, and a gift to everyone who had the privilege of listening. He began to realize that the piano was more than an instrument. It was a bridge between imagination and reality, between emotion and expression. Each time he played, he shared a piece of himself, connecting with listeners in ways that transcended words. The recognition he received was not the goal. It was the natural outcome of expressing his passion, dedication, and creativity. His music was alive, carrying the story of a boy who had waited, learned, and finally transformed his dreams into reality. Over time, the boy became a source of inspiration for his community. People admired not only his skill but also his journey, the patience, persistence, and belief in himself that had brought him to this point. His story reminded others that challenges and refusals are not the end but opportunities to grow, to prepare, and to become stronger. The piano, once a distant dream, had become a symbol of possibility, wonder, and the transformative power of dedication. Through each performance, each lesson, and each moment of practice, he continued to grow, not just as a musician but as a person. His connection to the piano deepened, his understanding of music matured, and his ability to express emotion through sound became increasingly powerful. The boy who had once been refused the chance to touch the keys had become a musician whose talent, passion, and perseverance inspired everyone who heard him. The boy continued to grow as a musician, each day exploring new melodies, experimenting with harmonies, and discovering ways to express deeper emotions through the piano. His connection to the instrument became almost instinctive, as if the keys responded to the thoughts in his mind before his fingers even touched them. He began composing original pieces, drawing inspiration from his own experiences, the world around him, and the emotions that filled his heart. Each composition was unique, a reflection of the journey he had taken from longing and patience to mastery and confidence. As his reputation grew, invitations to perform started arriving from local events, small concerts, and community gatherings. Each performance was different, as he never played the same piece in the same way twice. His music carried life, emotion, and unpredictability, capturing the attention and hearts of everyone who listened. The boy realized that his gift was not only about creating beautiful sounds but also about connecting with people, sharing a part of himself, and inspiring emotions in others. Every performance became a bridge, allowing him to communicate in a way that words could not. He also became a mentor to other children interested in music. Young learners would watch him play, their eyes wide with wonder, and he patiently showed them simple techniques, encouraging them to experiment and express themselves. He shared the lessons he had learned through years of observation, imagination, and practice, emphasizing the importance of patience, persistence, and believing in one's abilities. His story of being refused initially became a source of inspiration, showing others that determination and passion could overcome obstacles and lead to incredible achievements. In time, he started exploring collaborations with other musicians. He discovered how music could blend, how different instruments and voices could complement the piano, and how harmony could tell even more complex stories. These collaborations challenged him to think creatively, adapt to new rhythms, and develop his listening skills. Each partnership was an opportunity to learn, grow, and share music in a more profound way. The boy was no longer just playing for himself. He was creating experiences, memories, and emotions that would linger in the hearts of those who listened. He also began recording his music, capturing the melodies he created and sharing them more widely. Through recordings, people who could not attend his performances in person were able to experience the magic of his music. The response was overwhelming. Listeners were moved, inspired, and often amazed at the depth of feeling conveyed through the piano. The boy realized that music had the power to transcend distance and time, to touch lives in ways that few other forms of expression could. This understanding strengthened his purpose and motivated him to continue creating, performing, and sharing his gift. Despite growing recognition and opportunities, he remained humble and focused. He remembered the long months of waiting, observing, and practicing in secret before he was ever allowed to touch a piano. Those experiences had shaped not only his skill but also his character. He knew that true mastery required discipline, patience, and an ongoing willingness to learn. He continued to practice daily, refining his technique, exploring new compositions, and experimenting with improvisation. Every note was an opportunity to grow, and every melody was a chance to communicate a story. Over time, he began composing longer pieces that told complete narratives. Each composition had a beginning, middle, and end, often reflecting personal experiences or imagined journeys. He discovered the power of dynamics, timing, and emotional contrast, using them to create tension, release, joy, and sorrow. Listeners often described feeling as if they were traveling through the story themselves, guided by the music. The boy realized that he had moved beyond simply playing the piano. He was now a storyteller, an artist whose medium was sound and whose audience was the human heart. He also found joy in spontaneous performances. Sometimes, In a quiet corner of the community center, a park, or even a street, he would play without announcement or preparation. Passers-by would stop, drawn by the beauty and emotion of the music. Children would dance, adults would pause in awe, and strangers would exchange smiles, united by the shared experience of sound. In these moments, he understood the universal language of music, the way it could bring people together, heal emotions, and create connections across differences. As years passed, the boy's influence expanded further. He inspired other young musicians to pursue their passion, showing them that talent, patience, and dedication could open doors to unimaginable experiences. He encouraged creativity, celebrated individuality, and taught others that music was more than technique. It was emotion, expression, and connection. His own journey, from being refused the chance to touch the piano to becoming a performer, composer, and mentor, served as a powerful example of perseverance, hope, and the rewards of hard work. He also discovered the importance of reflection. After each performance or composition, he would think about what worked, what could be improved, and how he could express even more through his music. This reflective practice allowed him to continuously evolve, maintaining a balance between technical skill and emotional depth. He learned that music was not a static achievement but a living, breathing art form that demanded growth, adaptation, and constant exploration. Through all his experiences, he never forgot the simple joy that first drew him to the piano. The thrill of hearing a note come alive under his fingers, the excitement of creating a melody that moved others, and the wonder of discovering his own potential remained at the heart of his journey. He understood that recognition, applause, and admiration were gratifying, but they were not the essence of his passion. Music itself, the act of creation, and the ability to share emotion through sound were what mattered most. Eventually, his story reached beyond the local community. Articles, small documentaries, and social media highlighted the boy who had been denied the piano yet transformed into a remarkable musician through patience, dedication, and imagination. People from various places admired not only his skill but also the journey that had shaped him. His story became a symbol of hope, showing that obstacles could be transformed into opportunities, that persistence could lead to extraordinary achievements, and that talent coupled with hard work and belief in oneself could change lives. He continued to perform, compose, and inspire, carrying the lessons of his journey with him every step of the way. Each time he played, he honored the experiences that had shaped him, the refusals, the quiet observations, the imagined melodies, and the countless hours of practice. Music was no longer simply an interest or hobby. It was a way of life, a language through which he could communicate, inspire, and connect with the world. Over time, he began to teach formally, guiding young musicians in the art of expression, technique, and creativity. His approach emphasized not just skill but also patience, emotional understanding, and the importance of perseverance. He encouraged students to observe, imagine, and practice diligently, showing them that even small steps could lead to extraordinary outcomes. His teaching became another way to share his gift, ensuring that his journey inspired others long after his performances ended. The boy who once pleaded to touch the piano had grown into a musician whose fingers produced wonder, whose compositions inspired, and whose story motivated countless others. His legacy was not just in the music he created but in the lives he touched, the young musicians he mentored, and the hearts he moved through his dedication, patience, and passion. Every note he played was a testament to a journey that began with longing, was shaped by perseverance, and culminated in extraordinary achievement. In the quiet moments, when he sat alone at the piano, he would reflect on the journey from the first refusals to the applause, recognition, and impact he now experienced. He would smile, knowing that every challenge, every moment of waiting, and every hour of silent preparation had been necessary to create the music that now flowed effortlessly from his fingers. The piano, once a distant dream, had become a lifelong companion, a source of joy, expression, and connection. Through his story, others learned that talent alone is never enough. It is the combination of passion, patience, practice, and perseverance that leads to true mastery. The boy's journey showed that obstacles could become lessons, that imagination and observation could prepare one for greatness, and that the desire to express oneself could transform not just a life, but the lives of everyone touched by the music. His legacy was one of hope, inspiration, and the enduring magic of music created with love, dedication, and wonder.